What is up, my lovely people? We are back for episode 2 of the Radiantly Free podcast. I am so glad you're here. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Faith Drew and I am your host. So we're going to try not to say I promise you this podcast because apparently I said it a lot last time, so just bear with me. I am so excited for this episode, so much so that I literally have note cards. As I said in the previous episode, really feel like the current season of episodes is just things that I'm currently going through just to be able to build a foundation of who I am and just to be able to kind of hopefully be able to relate to other girls and other women who are going through the same things. So for all that being said, let's hop into this podcast. So I am going to be talking about comparison, and I have been dealing with this so much since deciding to start this podcast because naturally, whenever I was like, oh, I'm going to do a podcast, I wanted to go look at other people's podcasts or YouTubes or social medias just to get a feel out for it, just to try to get some tips and tricks and all the things. And I have to say, I sat there and I was just like, I am not qualified for this. They're prettier than me. They're smarter than me. They have more style than me. They go on more trips. They do this, they do that. They have this friend group and they live in a bigger city, and there's no possible way that I could do that. And I really feel like God was just like, this is what I've called you to. You are qualified and you are capable, and I wanted to just sort of share some things with you all that I feel like I have just been walking through and been trying to gain a firmer foundation on how to accomplish the things that I want to accomplish and that God is calling me to, without constantly comparing myself and telling myself that I can't do it because someone else is better able than I am. So the first thing is comparison is kind of twofold. There's two ways that you can compare yourself. You can compare yourself because you think you're better than someone else, and you can compare yourself because you think you're less than someone else. While both are very, very important, and you do have to be so careful with both of them, I'm going to be focusing more today on whenever you're comparing yourself because you think you're less than someone else. Now, it is equally as important to not go walking around thinking you're better than everyone or that you're the most qualified and just looking down on other people. It is so important not to do that. I'm sure one day we will get into that as well. But just to fit in with my current season of life, it's been feeling like I'm not good enough. And it's okay to feel like you're qualified for something and that you might be the better fit for something. That's so much different than just being prideful and thinking that no one else should and no one else can. So just to cover the bases on that one. But to jump into comparison as far as from a less than standpoint, comparison affects our lives, especially nowadays and in today's society, every single day. We get on our social media and we see all of these women and all of these people who look a certain way, act a certain way, have all of the new things, get to go on all these vacations and all of these trips, and maybe you want to do ministry and you see that they're going to speak at these big events and all of this stuff. And sometimes that's so hard and it can really wear down on your self-worth and your confidence, because I know that I look at some of these people and I'm like, I could never get there. What am I doing? Am I even going to make an impact? And God has just been like, just trust me. I have a plan and it's different than anyone else's plan, and just hold on and trust me. I have realized that comparison is not bound by age or status. So just because you might be comparing yourself to someone else and being like, oh, they're more qualified, they're more capable, they're prettier, they're smarter, they're funnier, la-da-da, that does not mean that they are exempt from also comparing themselves to someone else. There was just such a beauty in realizing that you are not the only person that is comparing yourself to someone. And even the people that you look up to, that you think have it all figured out, are still not exempt from comparing themselves or not feeling like they're good enough. That just poured into me a stronger desire to talk about this subject, because if the person that I look up to can deal with comparison, that means that a lot of people around me are dealing with the same thing. That leads me into, why is comparison so detrimental? And I was sitting, I don't even know, maybe watching TV, and all of a sudden it was just like, comparison is such a thief. It is such a thief. It wants to come in and take away your joy and your hope and your dreams, and if you let it, it will take away your future. Because so often we will sit there and we will compare ourselves to someone else to the point that we will stop acting upon our desires and where we hope to go, because we think, oh, well, we're not pretty enough, so I'll never be able to do that. Oh, I'm not smart enough, I'll never be able to accomplish that. Oh, I'm not this, oh, I'm not that, or oh, they can do it better, or there's no way that I could do it just like them. Well, guess what? You're right. You can't do it just like them. And there is a beauty in that, and there is a purpose in that. Because if you could do it just like them, exactly like them, then there would be no purpose for you. And if you believe that God has chosen you and He has called you for a purpose, then you best believe that your story is going to look differently than the person next to you or the person that you're wishing you could be like. Because there is a specific plan that God has for you to reach certain people in a way that only you can. And whenever you allow that to permeate your being and realize that you are the only person who can accomplish the things that you're supposed to accomplish in just the way that you would accomplish them. So yes, someone else might seem like they have a better appearance on camera, or they have a bigger following, or they have all of the things that you feel like you don't have, does not mean that your impact will be any less, because your perspective of how their life is not necessarily reality. And just because you perceive yourself as less than someone else does not make you less than someone else. So, all of that being said, I feel like I wanted to dive into the ways that we can fight comparison when those voices come up and we feel like we are not good enough and we are in the point where we are not progressing ourselves forward. So with all that being said, let's get into my first piece of advice. First, let's define comparison a little bit deeper. Whenever you are comparing yourself to someone, not only are there different types of comparison, but there's different ways that you perceive that comparison. You can compare yourself in a way that is challenging and that pushes you to be better, and you're like, oh, this person reads their Bible more. I'm going to push myself to read my Bible more, and I'm going to let this challenge me to be better and to grow in this area and to grow in this thing. Or you can allow it to be like, wow, this person reads their Bible more. They're just such a better Christian. That means that I shouldn't be trying that hard, or I can't help other people, or I am bad in this area and they're so much better, so I shouldn't even try, and whatever. There is a completely different impact that has. And you have to take that thought and ask yourself, okay, is this thought that I'm having pushing me forward, or is it holding me back? And if you can address that from the very beginning, you can start to train yourself to be like, no, I'm not going to let this hold me back. I'm going to let it push me to do better, or I'm going to allow this thought to make me a stronger person and a more capable person than make it hinder me and feel less than. Maybe it's an insecurity that you have. Maybe you feel like, they're prettier, or they have a better body and that makes you feel insecure, or whatever it may be. You could shift it and be like, okay, how do I surrender this thought to you, God, that I know that though I might feel this way, there is a reason and a purpose that you created me like this, and I'm going to trust that there is beauty in what you created, and I'm just going to walk forward, and I'm going to deny this thought from having impact on me and holding me back. With that first point, this story kind of came to mind from, if it's an insecurity standpoint, I remember this so vividly. I was in middle school, I believe, and I was homeschooled, whoop whoop, and my mom made me read a book about Amy Carmichael, and she was a missionary in India. And when she was little, I think her mom had blue eyes, And so one day she was just praying like, God, please, I want blue eyes. Please give me blue eyes. And because she had brown eyes and she didn't want them, she wanted blue eyes. She prayed and prayed and prayed, and she walked to a mirror and she opened her eyes and she was like, I still have brown eyes. And she was so upset. Later in her life, she became a missionary in India, and she was in this position where she had to go into a temple and save these young girls. And because of the fact that she had brown eyes, she was able to pass under cover and was able to go in there and grab these girls, because had she had blue eyes, that probably would not have been near as easy. And so she was able to celebrate that God had made her in such a way, and though she was miserable because she had brown eyes and she wanted blue, she later realized that that was one of her biggest blessings in that moment, was that she had brown eyes, because God knew from the very beginning that there was a purpose and a plan of every single detail of her life. You have to change your perspective of looking at every part of you as potential to grow and move forward and to challenge yourself to be better, and as made for a purpose, and that God has designed every inch of you just as He wanted to and for a perfect purpose. That doesn't mean that we can't better ourselves and push ourselves to be the best versions of ourselves, but it brings us such a comfort and new self-love and confidence in ourselves that the Creator of the universe stitched us together with every little stitch with purpose and a design that He knew greater than we did. And so that just helps build your confidence, but also helps you challenge your thinking moving forward of, okay, again, is this hindering me or is this pushing me to go forward? And those are two very, very, very different things. And you can use that moment of comparison to make yourself better or to make yourself miserable. Obviously, the number one thing that you can do after you address that thought is to surrender it to God and it's like, God, I give this to you. I feel all the emotions of it right now and I'm being hard on myself, but I surrender this to you and I take my hands off of it. Just pray that He would just help you move forward and keep going in the plans that He has for you. But also, I think it is so important to realize that we do not completely know what we are comparing ourselves to. It almost doesn't matter how well you know someone or how well you don't. You will never know the full picture of everything that that person deals with. This person that you are comparing yourself to, even if you don't want to believe it or you don't see it, it doesn't mean that they do not have their own unique challenges and problems that they have to walk through or have had to walk through. You don't know what difficulties it took to get them into the position that they are right now. You don't know what happens when all of the doors are closed. So though you might be comparing yourself to the outward version of what you see, because most people don't want you to see or want you to know the struggles that they have, but if you're comparing yourself to this outside version, I can almost guarantee you would look so differently at this person if you had walked through the same exact things that they had, or if you realize that their lives are not as easy or as seemingly put together as you might perceive it to be. And whenever you do that, you are almost making that person a human again in your brain. And you're realizing that, okay, though you might have this job, though you might have this status, though you might have all these things that I wish that I had, you and I are equal. We are both human beings who walk on the same earth, who deal with the same problems, who every single day have to face the opportunity to compare ourselves to someone or something else. Whenever they become humans again in your brain, you are able to combat this with, okay, they had to work really hard to get here, or they had to go through a lot or are going through a lot to maintain being here. You start to realize that your journey is unique to you just as theirs is unique to them. And just because they might have accomplished something in a very specific way does not mean that you have to do it in the same way, or that if your way looks different than theirs does, it doesn't mean that you are any less valid or any less impactful. Whenever you can face the reality that they are also humans too, you are finally able to allow yourself to show compassion to that person of, wow, you are so much more than this person who has it all put together, or this person with a status, or this person with an influence. You are a person who has struggles just like me, who doesn't have it all figured out, who has to work every single day to become better and to achieve your goals and your dreams. You also realize that you are seeing someone from what you view as the top. So say it's someone with the job that you want or the future that you dream of. You see them with all of their accomplishments, but you don't see everything it took to get there. And you are in the stage maybe where you are trying to get there. You are in this stage where you have to keep pushing. You have to keep yourself committed and sticking to what you dream and what you hope for, and let God lead you and guide you on your own individual path. You will appreciate the moment when you finally get the thing that you've been reaching for and searching for and that you've been committed to. You will realize that, wow, I am so glad whenever I was down at the bottom and I was struggling with my self-worth and who I am and my confidence, that I was able to keep pushing through and keep fighting for what I longed for and desired, because look, I made it and I didn't let those thoughts define me. And you are able to just have so much compassion for that person in this season of life that you're looking up to or looking at or comparing yourself to, because you're like, wow, you have had to go up the staircase and had to take every single step. And that also helps you shift your focus from a point of detriment to a point of challenging you to get better, because you're like, wow, if they can push through, I can push through. And if these are the things that they had to work on and they had to accomplish, then that means the things that I'm working on and accomplishing aren't because I'm failing or aren't because I'm not good enough. It's just a part of trying to become the people that we want to become and walking in that journey rather than wishing we were at the end. It is so important that we can take ourselves from this feeling of misery and feeling like we're not good enough to, okay, we all have to take the steps and do the hard things and go through these trials and try to figure it all out to finally get to where we're going. Because you can either give up or you can keep pushing through. It is just important for you to be able to look at that person next to you and just be like, okay, you're human too, and you face hard things too. And just because you're where I hope to be or where I feel like I'm going, that doesn't make me any less worthy or any less able to do the things that I want to accomplish. So that is a big, big thing that you have to realize, is that you don't entirely know what you're comparing yourself to. And then whenever you can finally make that person a human again with their own unique struggles and their own unique journey, you're able to show so much more compassion to them. I also think it is so important for us to realize that God does not call the qualified, He qualifies the called. And if it is something that God has planned for you, I promise you He will raise you up and He will build you up and He will stand right next to you as you are on this journey to achieve the things that you want to achieve and become the person that you want to become. And He will help you as you walk with Him and He walks beside you. He will help you know your worth and know that you were created for purpose and that you are beautiful and wonderfully made. I find the story of Moses as honestly such a good representation of how God will take people who don't seem qualified and make them qualified. Because Moses had a speech impediment and he was called to speak some very strong things to some very important people. And he was like, God, I cannot do this. There's no possible way that me of all people can stand before the Pharaoh and all of these people and say all the things you want me to say. Like, I cannot have that impact. And God's like, no, you can. I called you. This is what you're supposed to do. This is what you were created for. So, nope, you're going to do it. And I'm going to help you out. And He gave him Aaron to come stand beside him and talk with him. And there is just such a beauty in realizing that God knew Moses had this speech impediment. And He still came up beside him and said, here, I'm helping you out. This is what I've called you to do. I'm not going to leave you stranded. I'm not going to put you in a position that you cannot accomplish. I'm going to help you out and I'm going to bring someone alongside of you. And that is still so relevant to us today. That if God has called you to do something, and since God has created you in the way that He meant to create you on purpose, for a purpose, then He's not going to leave you stranded. He's not going to leave you feeling like you're not worth anything and that you're less than someone else, because He has made us each unique. That means that there is no one else like us, and no one. It is completely individual to us. Every aspect of our lives. We can relate to other people and we have similarities, but there is no one just like you. And God did that on purpose, because together we all work together and can reach so many people and impact so many different areas and accomplish so many different things. God is never going to leave you. He's never going to forsake you. He's never going to leave you feeling like you are worthless and without purpose. He is always going to be there to be like, this is who I've called you to be. This is who you are. This is my love for you, and it covers over every area of your life, even those moments when you don't feel like you're worth it, or that you're not going to make an impact, or you're not going to be able to accomplish your dreams. He is there, and He is standing beside you, and He is going to raise you up and bring things alongside of you and help encourage you and guide you. And though it might not always be easy, but He is never going to leave you, and He is never going to allow you to sit there and feel so bad about yourself if you're coming to Him asking Him, God, please show me, please lead me and guide me and direct me. Please help me have a strong confidence in who I am and who You've called me to be. You'll be able to realize that you are walking in so much more freedom, because nothing around you can dictate who you are, because God is so strong within you that you are like, nope, that is not what God says about me. That does not line up with who I know I am. And you are able to walk in so much more freedom, knowing who you are and how you are, and that you were made for such a time as this, for a purpose. So there is just such a beauty in that, and I have just been walking through that and learning that, especially as I've been going through this podcast and entering the world of social media, which, as we know, is just such a difficult environment. But He has been so good and so faithful to be like, Faith, I am equipping you and I am calling you to this, so just rely on me and stand with me and just watch where I take you. And that has just been so freeing to me. So all of that to say, thank you so much for joining me for my second episode. I pray that all of you just walk in radiant freedom this week, that you would just be able to walk free from the comparison or feeling like you're not worthy or not good enough, and that you will just chase your dreams and chase after what God has called you to be. And I challenge you to just allow Him to walk up beside you and be the one who is the voice that dictates every feeling and every emotion that you have towards yourself, because He has called you, He has chosen you, and He has a purpose far beyond what you could ever imagine. So I love you guys, and thank you so much for listening.